Die, My Love. As within a review, this may contain spoilers. I didn't like this movie. There was a lack of flow and too much was left off camera. With things left off camera, there's a lack of progression and scenarios often felt sudden. I'll give you some examples, but first let me give you a bit of a backstory. This is a young couple, Grace and Jackson, played by Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson respectively. They move into Jackson's childhood home and they are madly in love with a ton of sexual chemistry, animalistic even. Sexuality plays a big part in the story, which leads to some of the cause and effect I'll get to a bit later. Grace gets pregnant and has the baby very quickly. The story doesn't focus too much on the pregnancy, which I'm okay with for the sake of time. After having a baby boy, their life turns into chaos. What I didn't like was how quickly the chaos ensued. There was no clear explanation of why things spiraled out of control. The story jumped into the chaos without delving into the backstory of the issues the couple was facing. We see glimpses, but no deep explanation. One reason for their issues was that after the baby arrived, Grace was still sexually charged while Jackson wasn't. Grace also suffered from postpartum depression. This left Grace to feel that she was no longer desired by Jackson. Because they no longer had sex with each other, they began to cheat on one another. It would have been nice to have scenes of them talking about the lack of sex and what's happening between them. This eventually did happen, but it was after all the mess had occurred in their relationship. We never got a clear understanding of why Jackson was no longer sexually attracted to Grace. Did he not find her sexually appealing after she gave birth? I have no doubt this is more common than we think, and I'm sure that those who have gone through something similar in their relationship could fill in the gaps more easily, but as a complete story, it felt half-baked in a sense. Again, too much was left off screen, and we as the audience were dealt with the consequences. To further this, a character who rode a motorcycle was introduced out of nowhere, and he showed up in random scenes to have sex with Grace. It was really odd. The most jarring scenes in the movie were when she would hurt herself. In one instance, she ran through a glass door, and in another, she slammed her face into a mirror on her wedding night. Both scenarios came out of nowhere, and they felt like they were done for shock value as opposed to a natural instinct that the character would have. Some would argue that those scenes were meant to be shocking. I argue that yes, while that's true, they would still be shocking if the flow in those scenes were done better. Often a scene would begin and end, and a new scene would begin and end without the progression I mentioned earlier, which caused the scenes to have a lack of cohesion. This felt more like a movie of individual scenes compiled together. While I highly enjoyed both Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, I didn't necessarily like them in this film, and I think it's more the story and the structure of the movie that made me feel this way. The film felt like a stage play as opposed to a theatrical movie. In a stage play, you tend to amp up the acting for the people in the back. This felt similar to that as if they were acting for the people in the back. An example of this was their fighting. They were often a bit over the top. I may not have liked the movie, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't, and it may be worth watching. So those were my thoughts. What did you think of the movie? Leave a comment down below, subscribe, give the video a like, and see you in the next review.